Well, welcome back. Look who I'm joined with. I've got Cheryl Grainger with me. Oh, my friend. Oh, my friend and my colleague and my companion at the MHRA board meetings. Actually, you know what, Cheryl, before you chime in, well, my Substack is called Matron of Words in Edgeways, so you'll be lucky to get Words in Edgeways. So I think we're a bit Cagney and Lacey. We're the Cagney and Lacey of the MHRA, aren't we? We really are. And we've both been to the MHRA board meeting last week, Dame June's last. And you know what? We thought we'd jump on Zoom and we'd just have a chat. It's in conversation with Debi Evans and Cheryl Grainger today. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to have a chat because, well, to those of you that don't know us, we are really the Cagney and Lacey on the MHRA's backs. And when we go to a board meeting, we talk a lot about it. So we thought, why not let you guys earwig in to what we're going to say about it? So that's what we're going to do. But before I let you chime in, Cheryl, because I know you're going to start with Anthony Hardern, we'll come to him in a minute. Let's just give those that are watching who don't know about the Medicines Health Regulatory Agency. MHRA, by the way, is an acronym for harm. So do know harm, quite appropriate, eh? Anyway, they regulate every medicine that comes down the line, and that includes complementary medicines as well. So when you go and get your prescription from the doctor, it'll be because Dame June Raine and her team have approved safe and effective is what you're getting. So that's who the MHRA are. And they're based at Canary Wharf in London. And they have a laboratory where they do lots of experiments on drugs in South Mims. They also, and Cheryl will chime in if I'm wrong here, they also employ about 1,200 people, or they should employ about 1,200 people. And bearing in mind the FDA was employing 13,000, the American regulator, 13,000 staff, MHRA, 1,300 staff. So that'll just give you an idea of the size of them. Also, they are an enabler. Go on, Cheryl.
But when the vaccines first came out and they got so many side effects, Pfizer took on 2,400 extra staff. Okay, and it's actually 1,320 they're supposed to have at the MHRA. So that was virtually twice the number of extra staff Pfizer took on to deal with the yellow cards equivalents in America.
Okay, so now, Cheryl, tell everybody who fund the MHRA.
Well, 86% of the funding comes from Big Pharma, and presumably the government fund the rest, but that's only a teensy little bit.
Tiny. Should we just rewind on that? 86% of the regulator, who call themselves the enabler, they enable the pharmaceutical industry to siphon all of their products to us, and they're paid to do so by them.
And they were pulled up by a select health committee way back in 2004-05 because this was wrong. It was deemed as being very corrupt, because how on earth can you regulate somebody that's paying you to regulate them? But nothing was done about it. That's 20 years ago. Because they're not just looking after medicines, remember, Debbie, they're looking after devices, which they talk about at this meeting, and they're also looking after blood products. Well, of course, they went wrong, didn't they? But anything that goes wrong with any of the regulations on any of these products takes 20 years to come to a tribunal or whatever it is that investigates it. And there's a lot of people who suffer in that time.
There's a lot of people, and you bring up blood products there, but the hepatitis infected blood scandal, that's been going on 40 plus years, nearly 50 years, and people still haven't gotten any compensation. And I know that we're going to be talking about vaccine injuries, so for those of you that are listening, this is very important in the bigger scheme. But not just that, the MHRA, they have board meetings. They have board meetings that are held in public, but they're not public. So we can sit and watch them by Zoom. So you have to apply for tickets to the MHRA board meeting through Eventbrite, and it's a free ticket. And then you're invited to watch MHRA board meetings. And I haven't even thought about the number of hours, Cheryl, that you and I have spent, because we've been to every single one of these MHRA board meetings. I started going to them back in 2021 in lockup when they were all on Zoom, and it was all really informal, and there were only 8 views and nobody had taken much notice. Loose lips sink ships. And then as we started to bring them to the notice of the public, they became a far more slick operation. It's always been lovey-dovey's, pat yourselves on the back types of meetings, but now they've become more staged. And let's just quickly talk, Cheryl, about the conflicts of interest and the revolving doors at the MHRA and who are on the board as well.
Well, there's so many of them. I mean, anybody who wants to can go and look at the MHRA accounts, and it's actually listed on there what the conflicts of interest are. There's very few of them that don't have a conflict of interest, put it that way. That means they're not only linked to certain pharma companies, they're paid by them as well. And of course, there's always this revolving door when somebody leaves the MHRA, and you can end up in the WHO or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It just depends, you know, where your preference is.
Yeah, those conflicts of interest, I mean, they are serious conflicts of interests as well. You know, you've mentioned the WHO. We've got Raj Long, who nobody knows who the heck she is, because she's not a doctor. She's a nobody really, but she's come from the Bill and Melinda Gates stable. She's on the board. You've got people from Microsoft on the board. You've had people that have got conflicts of interest with AstraZeneca on the board, with all sorts of different industrial partners, pharmaceutical partners. And it's been not just a revolving door for conflicts of interest. We've seen so many people come and go, chairs come and go, different executive directors, non-executive directors. And the meeting that we've just been to, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be doing a post-mortem into what happened at Dame June Raine's last board meeting, because it was her last, and it was Professor Anthony Hardern's first, and he was sitting in as chair. Interestingly, though, you just mentioned conflicts of interest, and I went to the conflicts of interest updated, and they've still got Graham Cook there as chair. And even though Anthony Hardern's been at the MHRA for 3 months, they're sloppy. They haven't thought to update the conflicts of interest. So as far as I'm aware, we're no further forward with knowing quite who he's involved in.
Well, they make a big point of asking about conflicts of interest, any new ones, right at the beginning,
Yeah.
to do with these sorts of meetings. And I've never known anybody be asked to leave because something is conflicting. So there's no point of them in them having them.
No, there isn't. But they do also announce at the top of the meeting now that you can't record it, you can't take screenshots, because we used to, but all of a sudden now. And I have to say, Cheryl, the November board meeting that we went to is still not up on YouTube. It's not being published. So MHRA, if you're watching this, we're a board meeting short. But at this board meeting,
it's actually 4 months since the last meeting.
Yeah.
So it was November when they last got together. And there's been or going to be some changes, but that's no excuse. These things should be a regular thing that goes on normally.
Well, they should have published it. It was a public meeting. It should have been published. Luckily, I do shorthand, so I've still got all the shorthand notes from the November meeting. But it's just worth noting that it's just sloppy, and you have to ask yourself why. So at this meeting, which was Dame June's last, there were 46 members of the public attended remotely over Zoom, 12 from industry, and 5 academics, I believe. So we started off with, we always start the meeting off with the, all of the housekeeping and blah, blah. And then we go into Dame June Raine's meeting. But I know you want to start off really with Professor Anthony Hardern, because he's the new chair. So let's just do some bullet points, because we're going to we're trying not to make this too long to bore you. So we're going to hit topics fairly quickly and move on to get as much as we can covered.
Yeah,
so
I just think it's interesting that Professor Hardern, he started off by saying what he sees for the agency as you go forward with his lead of the committee. He wants continuous improvement. He wants increasing surveillance so that we have patient safety at all times being our main thing. He wants it to be a flourishing place to work, struggling with that one at the moment. They want to improve public engagement and transparency. They want to have a strategic direction for the agency, and they want to be scrutinising performance all the time. And they want regulatory decisions will be made in government from the advice that the MHRA with the CHM and the EWG, which are the expert working groups, and don't forget the Committee on Human Medicines.
Commission for Human
Sorry,
Medicine.
Commission for Human Medicine will all be working together. Now, when you look at the CHM and the minutes that were released and then taken down and then released again, the conflicts of interest is several pages. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the first meeting that they published, there were 80 people. They weren't all taking part as such. Some were observers, but all of the conflicts of interest went to several pages. So it's right the way through all of these committees.
In plain sight. I mean, it's the same story over and over again. And you mentioned there, you mentioned two words beginning with S, and the two words should never be put together, in my opinion. And one is patient, safety, and the other is surveillance. And let's face it, that's what this is all about, surveillance. But we'll come on more to surveillance in a minute, because Professor Anthony Hardern is also, I believe, I should add, he's had 3 injections, I think, and he suffers with, in inverted commas, long COVID. So I just want to throw that in there. So he's very much pro-vaccine, although he's suffering from long COVID.
Okay, otherwise known as. Right. So the overall thing that comes into my head when you're looking at the board meeting is that they're there to help industry through a speeded up process. They're enabling them. And then they want to try and get the product to the patient all the way through. It's speed, so that the product gets to the patient, who then are becoming guinea pigs because the product isn't tested properly by the time they get to it. So that's why your safety isn't there. That is what their overall aim is, as far as I can see from this.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I would go as far as to say that the MHRA are purely there and in existence to enable the pharmaceutical companies. They're not there in our best interest. They're not actually doing anything for us at all. But I mean, there was a big segment in this board meeting about yellow cards, and I know we're going to come on to yellow cards in a minute, it was phenomenal information, actually, so stay tuned. But after we get Anthony Hardern giving his little bit and being terribly grateful to be appointed to the MHRA as chair, we then hand over, don't we, to Dame June Raine, and she gives her last report. And normally it's not that long. It's normally only about 3 to 5 minutes long, but she packs quite a bit in. What do you want to say? Where do you want to start on Dame June's little report?
Our national treasure.
Her extraordinary public service for 40 years in the MHRA. Let's not forget June Raine. Dame June Raine is, I think she's 72 now, I think, and she's been with the MHRA for nearly 40 years. So Dame June Raine, you should know better, but we'll come on to that in a minute. Yeah, national treasure.
Yeah, she feels that she's really changed things, because established medicines have now got no backlogs in their system. They're all going through in the time frame that's supposed to be happening now. And all the new preparations are running on time, they're saying. And this is good because they have predictable timelines and everything fits into it. There's no hiccups. There's nothing that comes along and causes a big problem. It all runs according to the time frame. So these are the predictable timelines. She mentioned in particular the RSV vaccines as being something to be proud of. She mentioned digital mental health tech, safety and reliability were the 2 words that she used to go according to that. And then she said that we were going to go on to look at awareness of the yellow card website, how you report the side effects. And then she was quite pleased about the rapid use of Wegovy and Ozempic.
I know.
Which really, and what she said in relation to that was they're looking for any fakes in the system. when people are buying online and what have you. Not looking for ADRs and deaths that are caused by these preparations.
400 hospitalizations, 400 hospitalizations through Wegovy and these weight loss injections. Let's not forget, for those of you that don't know, these weight loss injections, they are literal injections every week. They're not available on the NHS unless you've got a specific medical condition that you're allowed to get it on the NHS. It's 70, 80 pounds a week. And if you have a history of thyroid cancer in your family, then this is not something you should even be looking at. These were originally designed for people with diabetes, and we've had 400 people hospitalized. The serious adverse reactions are off the scale, aren't they, Cheryl? I mean, seriously.
The thing that's not right about all this is the ABPI, the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry Code of Practice. You can't say anything to the public about any ethical prescription medicine. The only exception to that, where you can do public advertising as such, is vaccinations. And don't we know that, because that's happened over the last few years. But these aren't vaccinations. These are a medical treatment that's based in diabetes. And therefore, they shouldn't be promoted like they are. The papers are full of them.
I know.
And that's the thing that is, so people send off for them from wherever and haven't got a clue about what they're actually using in their body. And it's not medically overseen. And I just think that is bringing big red flags. But there's so much that gets talked about. I mean, you open the paper and it says so-and-so drug could affect this. It's never that we've done these studies and it's clinically proven that this is what has been achieved by this particular drug. They start kind of giving you nibbles at the information and expect people to start probably going to their doctors and demanding these things.
Yeah, but as we go on, and we will go on to the yellow card segment, I can't wait for that. We'll go on to the yellow card segment, because when we do get on it, we'll start to see, we're sitting here exasperated because we are expecting, as are thousands of people out there, they're expecting the MHRA to do something to help them. But the MHRA is doing nothing to help them at all. And we'll come on and find that. So who do we want to pick off next?
Probably Raj.
Raj Long. Raj Long, who is who exactly?
Well, she's been put in charge of dementia, hasn't she?
Well, she wrote the guidance for the Department of Health for dementia, but she's not a geriatrician. She's not a doctor or an expert in the elderly. She seems to have no experience whatsoever. There's very little online about Raj Long, very little, only that she came from the Bill and Melinda Gates stable and has had her hooks in there for quite a long time. So who the heck is she to be writing the dementia guidance?
Yeah, one thing I forgot to say under June that's very important is she tells us regulation is based on best science. Right? We could pull holes in that. And then she also talks about this point of care manufacturing, and in particular the mRNA vaccines, which means hospital manufacturing of these vaccines that are so dreadfully difficult to make. She talks about the agency being cutting edge science.
Well, it's always been her ambition to have the MHRA as the global regulator, the overall global regulator. That's her ambition.
They're not doing the cutting edge science. That's been done elsewhere, supposedly, if you can call it cutting edge. And at the end of the day, the agency is enabling these things to happen. But to actually do point of care manufacturing, if you talk to Headley, he will tell you that's impossible. Or they'll try and it'll produce terrible effects.
Lies, all lies.
Yeah.
Sorry. Are we done with Raj? Do we want to carry on with Raj? Because Raj is very much into the money. She's very much into the prestige. She's very much into, let's link with this. Let's collaborate with this. Let's think about making the MHRA the biggest, best global regulator in the world.
So Raj Long is very much a global player. I mean, you've already mentioned her links with global organisations. And her role in life is to make the MHRA more important. And she always makes sure she makes comment on every item at the board meeting. And this time she got herself another job within a committee because she was spouting forth on what she could do to help. So patients should be able to get the most up-to-date medicines, okay, in a safe way, which compared with how they're doing this is a contradiction in terms.
Yeah.
But that's what she was actually saying. And they're talking about the mRNA cancer vaccines and then these personalised gene therapies. And of course, the cancer vaccines shouldn't be called vaccines. They should be called gene therapies, and they should come under more regulatory control so that at least toxicology is looked at. But what they're aiming for is this regulation of the platform. So they say mRNA vaccines are safe and effective. Therefore, they've done all the work now. We've been using them for 4 years. And therefore, it's perfectly okay to push through the next set of vaccines that come out, vaccine in inverted commas, because you don't need to keep doing the work. Now, obviously, when an ethical drug in the past was made and it came to the end of its patent, then you could start making it generically. I think hospitals like that because it was cheaper. So you could make it in your garden shed as long as it matched in with what the British Pharmacopoeia actually said that medicine should be. I'm wondering.
Explain what the British Pharmacopoeia is.
Oh, we're going to go on to that, aren't we?
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
so basically an encyclopedia of drugs and what they consist of. So if you're making aspirin to sell in Tesco's, then your aspirin will have to match the recipe in British Pharmacopoeia to actually be approved to be put on their shelves. I haven't looked it up, but what do they say about mRNA COVID-19 vaccines? Are they part of the British Pharmacopoeia? Because we're now saying that the platform has been regulated. They know that it's safe and effective. So
can I just butt in very quickly to say that the way they're getting around this, because I mean, we've heard people are going to be screaming at the screen and saying, but you know, we've heard of people in America and the USA, they're banning mRNA COVID vaccines. They're just banning them. They're banning the mRNA COVID vaccines. The way they're getting around it, and there's a lot to say about the cancer vaccines, so much to say about the cancer vaccines. But all of these vaccines, gene therapies, and problem reaction solution type model that we're going with is being sold to the British public as, aren't you lucky? Aren't you lucky? You know, you've got a really horrible disease, or there's a really horrible thing coming, or whatever, and we are going to get the cutting edge treatment. The UK are going to be the first. How lucky are you? I mean, you could be in some third world country where you can't even get a paracetamol, and yet you are now going to get proton beam therapy. You're now going to get the latest cancer vaccine. We're the only country rolling out cancer vaccines. We're already rolling them out, mRNA cancer vaccines for lung cancer last year. So this is what they're saying to the public. They're saying, if you're that desperate because you're that sick and you need a solution, don't worry, we're going to have the cutting edge technology to help you. And actually, this technology, as you and I keep banging on about, has never been tested. It's not safe, and it should never have been rolled out to the population. And that's really, isn't it, the basics of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, for the last 30 years, they've been trying to get somewhere with this, and it's never been able to get anywhere. They've created a pandemic so that they could introduce it. And then they're leading off from that, now that they've caused cancer from the treatment, they're now trying to use the same technology again. And the secondary effect of mRNA technology is to cause cancer. So you're treating cancer with the cancer-causing preparation. And don't forget, we know it's been analysed now by lots of different centres. I think there's at least 10 now about the contamination and the SV40 and what have you. They've identified all these things that can lead to cancer. So we know the cause. I mean, the MHRA doesn't seem to ever look at cause.
Ah, well, we'll come on to cause, we'll come on to yellow cards, we'll come on to information they're receiving at the moment. But I think it's worth at this point reminding people that we've seen a lot of, and I've already done a podcast that you can go and have a look on rare disease, because things like myocarditis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, all of these rare conditions that you hardly see somehow now have become common. They're no longer rare. But the new kid on the block since the rollout of the COVID-19 injection, if anybody else can find anything else that's changed fundamentally in these last 4 to 5 years, please let us know. Because as far as I can see, it's the only thing that's changed is the COVID-19 injection. And yet we now have the birth of a whole new disease, which is called turbo cancer. Well, that's what we're calling it, and that's what a lot of experts are calling it. However, the government are about to ban the term turbo cancer. You won't be hearing that from the government. You'll be hearing turbo cancer referred to as rare cancer. And this is a cancer that's suddenly appeared since the rollout of the jabs. So, I mean, mRNA, I mean, we could talk forever on mRNA.
The very unfortunate thing about these turbo cancers is it's affecting younger people. It's
Yes,
affecting people who don't get those cancers at that age. It's
children.
affecting organs that don't normally get a cancer.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's spreading very rapidly and presenting very late. So there's little chance with it. And it's very, very soul destroying that this has been brought on by doing something that the government asked them to do, that the
Yeah,
MHRA approved.
yeah. And I want to throw something out there as a hypothetical, really, but hypothetically, somebody today, tomorrow, the next day, a family is going to get told that their child has cancer. And it is the most devastating news that any family can ever receive, that your child has cancer. Worse still, if you're told that that cancer is aggressive, it's rapid, it's metastasized to different parts of the body. What do you do? What does that parent do? What will they be offered? Well, the MHRA, of course, they're the ones that are in charge of the accelerated clinical trials, pushing all of these clinical trials. And if you've got a very sick child and your only hope is a clinical trial with perhaps another novel gene therapy, mRNA injection, or CAR T cell therapy, or proton beam therapy, what are those parents going to do? And what if those parents say, actually, do you know what? We'd rather go down the holistic route first. Are they going to be allowed to do that? Will the NHS turn around to them and say, we have to do what we feel is in your child's best interests? And we feel it's in your child's best interests to go on to an accelerated clinical trial and try some untested whatever that's being rolled down the pipeline for their particular condition. You know, there are so many things, because people that are watching mustn't forget that the MHRA, it's not just that they regulate medicines and devices. We'll come on to devices in a minute, because what is a device? But they also are regulating clinical trials as well, and approving clinical trials and accelerating the clinical trials. Who do you want to go to next? Who are we going to highlight next on the board?
Your favourite, Liz.
Liz Booth is the People's Officer for the MHRA. It's quite extraordinary, actually, bless her, because she doesn't actually know how many people she's got. I think that's probably because they're all going out of the exit door too quickly for her to count. So she's in charge of people, and she does the people survey, and she just wants to know that everybody's happy and everyone's not, everyone's doing their job. But that's not really what's happening, is it? We haven't got a happy bunch of people at Canary Wharf or at South Mims, have we?
Oh, we haven't. We haven't. They apparently, in the surveys done, are moaning about the workload they've got. Bless them. They've got too much to do. Meeting the objectives put on them puts people under pressure, apparently. Bit like saying we're not giving kids exams anymore because it makes them stressed. What they're trying to do is to recruit into these areas quicker so they can make up any shortfalls. So I suppose the workload is shared. And they want to enable competence. Okay. So I'd like to see their definitions of competence. So leadership staff have to be well supported. And the ambition is for people to really enjoy working at the MHRA. Not tempted?
No, well, no, because as they said, I mean, I don't live in the required geographical area because
I
they've
don't
only.
understand that. Why
Why are they doing
is that
that?
a civil service thing that you've got?
Right. So let's explain to people. This is how our conversations go on the phone, folks. So let's explain to people that they seem to only be recruiting people from London and South Mims. And South Mims is where their National Institute of Biological Stand, basically their laboratory is. And they can only recruit from those tiny, because in the larger scale of things and in the experts that they need, they've only got those tiny areas to focus in on.
It's digital that they're struggling with. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't forget they were really struggling with digital when they were trying to analyse all the stuff that was coming in supposedly from Pfizer, Moderna and AstraZeneca at the end of 2020. And you'd need computer people to handle that amount of information.
Well, they couldn't get them, remember? They couldn't get them because the systems kept crashing. They needed the tech people, but they couldn't get the tech people because they said that everybody, all those tech people were in high demand. And so these people were going for jobs with Google and all the big tech companies because they were getting huge salaries with private companies, far better than with the MHRA.
But the pull with the MHRA civil service is you get a good pension. But of course, if you're 24, that's perhaps not as big a pull as it might be when you're 54. So at the end of the day, they are struggling to fill their vacancies. And therefore, there are very big challenges to fill posts, finding the right skills that they need to actually keep the MHRA going. Therefore, that would release the pressure on the people who are unhappy because of the workload.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're saying the majority who work at the MHRA believe in their mission.
Yeah, but they're inexperienced, remember, because the ones that they are getting in, they're saying are juniors. So now that the seniors are having to supervise the juniors, which means the seniors are spending so much time supervising, they're not actually getting their own jobs done. And you've got to ask yourself, seriously, you've got to ask yourself, our lives are in these people's hands. So far, we've told the public, those that are watching, we've told them that these people are literally working for industry. They're working for the MHRA's best interest, for industry's best interest, for pharmaceutical best interest, not for the patient's best interest at all. And you know what, folks? The majority of people working at the MHRA, they're all miserable. Miserable. They're going off with stress. Who was it? Somebody else on the board.
The board thinks everything's fine. The board's happy as Larry and patting themselves on the back.
Lovies, champagne and roses.
Each other every 2 months.
You know what, Cheryl? I've made a decision because if this was our phone call, we'd probably want to stop for a cup of tea by now. So I think what we should do is carry on highlighting. But I think the big chunk of the yellow card, which was the yellow card on the MHRA board meeting, I think everybody, you know what? After this, we're going to go through the rest of what went on in the board meeting, but we're going to do a separate piece just on what they talked about in the yellow card at the MHRA board meeting. It's not going to be as long a piece as this is, but I think it's so significant what we learned and what we heard that we need to make a special deal of it. So let's do that, Cheryl. So, okay, so let's stay with Liz then. Anything else with people that we need to know about, apart from that they're miserable?
I mean, when we were in the middle of them assessing the vaccines, they were 25% down and working from home. Yeah. She mentions that there have been 44% of vacancies in the past. And that has now...
How many? Sorry, excuse me, rewind.
44% of the whole lot were vacant at one point.
Nearly half the MHRA was empty.
That has halved, so it's now 22%, but then it started to creep up again. So they're not doing very well. They're certainly not doing very well recruiting, and then they're not doing very well retaining. And I think it's all to do with the training that they get, that they feel this pressure on them. Probably because there aren't enough people. I mean, if you think there should be nearly half as many again, it puts quite a few people under a lot of pressure. And as you say, it's because of where they're recruiting and what have you. They also mentioned this IR35, which is something to do with tax, and that means that the different levels, permanent, part-time and fixed-term contracts, get paid the same level of tax. That's kind of all they've really said, as far as I can remember. What about yourself, Debbie? Is there anything else you can think should better?
What about people? Well, apart from the fact that they haven't got many people. Oh, but don't forget, at one of the board meetings, not this one that we went to, but at one of the board meetings, Liz said that they were incentivizing the staff with vouchers and bouquets of flowers and a personal letter from June, to give them a bit of encouragement. So, if you, I think actually someone said, how much is a box of chocolates these days? And I think the answer was 50 quid. So if you're doing something well at the MHRA, you get a bunch of flowers, a handwritten note from Dame June. Oh, let's not forget, actually, very quickly, Dame June's last board meeting, and I know we'll maybe finish on Dame June's cheerio, but we need to tell people that the new CEO of the MHRA, who will be starting on the 1st of April, April Fool's Day, ooh, in plain sight, is Lawrence Talon. And let's see if he gets his talons out, shall we? Because I've always got mine out. But he's basically a manager. He's not a doctor. He's not a clinician. He's not a pharmacologist. He's got no medical training. So he's basically, I think he was in charge of Guy's NHS Trust, CEO of Guy's NHS Trust. That's where he's coming from. Loads of
Department of Health as well, didn't he?
Department of Health. He's got probably quite a few conflicts of interest, but he's going to be heading the next MHRA board meeting, which should be in about May or June, but we'll keep you tuned for the next date. So where do we want to go next then, before we finish off this part one?
Yeah, I mean, Harding came in at one point again and said he believes it's a tremendous aim, giving patients early access to innovative medicines. Same thing again. I mean, all the way through this, I mean, they come across, like with your vouchers and what have you, as being very old-fashioned, that are trying to work in a scientific world by rushing it.
Yeah.
As if they don't really understand the whole process.
No, but they're not worried, because what they're doing, Cheryl, is they're going to make sure that you and me and anyone else that's watching in the United Kingdom in the NHS, we're going to get cutting edge technology. We're going to get groundbreaking. We are basically, translate that into, have become the experimental laboratory for the world, basically, because everything that's being manufactured abroad is going to be shipped over here and it's going to be tested on the UK. And we've got a lot of evidence to support that. But let's stay on target, because you know what? Well, people might actually start to understand that once we start talking, we can talk for hours and hours about loads of different subjects. But I was interested, though, to hear Michael Whitehouse, who was also co-chair when he took over and was co-chair with Graham Cook. But he's a non-executive board member, I think. Audits, financial, does all the financial kind. Yeah. So he asked about how data's used.
He did.
He did.
Question. He was very brave.
I like Michael's questions, actually, for the record.
It's as if he's read the information that had been sent before the meeting.
Yeah, he's pretty savvy. If I had to actually have a little bit of respect for one of members of the board, it would be him, yeah, because Michael Wetton. It's Paul Whitehouse, isn't it? It's Michael Wetton, I think. But yeah, he came out and he said, how is data used? Because he said that it's not as good as we think, right?
Data sharing is not as good as we think it is. We should be sharing data to make NHS more effective. Information sharing across the agencies with NICE and NHS, etc., is what he thinks we should be doing. And he's saying with data strategy, we need to go beyond the 1 year cycle, pointed out to them. So they need to be
data. Here we go. And did you notice during the whole way, pretty much during the MHRA board meeting, it didn't matter which agenda article we were on, they were talking about the NHS app. Oh, let's use the NHS app. Let's utilize the NHS app. Let's market ourselves through the NHS app. It was all about the app. And we've been talking about the app for ages.
Stop using it.
Huh?
Wouldn't you just love people to stop using it?
Then I'd like them to delete it if
Yeah.
possible. People don't realize that they're inputting their data because it's for their own convenience.
Yeah.
But where is that data going? We already know that the NHS Federated Data Platform is run by Palantir, who happens to be in a conflict zone in Ukraine. I mean, they are, this is a military company here performing a health function, and they're in control of all of our data. But hey, that's another complete subject.
What we also had was the British Pharmacopoeia.
Oh yeah.
Well, there was a couple of people from that organisation who came to speak to the board, developing this asset to benefit patients. Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Because obviously it's a list of ingredients that go into each preparation. So if you wanted to manufacture it, this is how you have to manufacture it. So it's saying it's a collection of standards, so that should give you quality. And that's been around since 1864. So it's been going a while. There's a commission now, a BP commission, a 5-year strategy to meet changing needs. Well, I would have thought that needs aren't changing. People just want safe medication produced in a quality way. And what they're doing is they're supporting the agency, how, and patients. June said something at this point because she's very keen to not keep patients waiting. It's this rush bit again.
All in our own best interest. It's all for us.
We're
all
going to make
us.
the things that'll make you better, and we're going to get it to you very quickly without any testing on it. And they're talking about biosimilars to produce what the system needs. So things that are similar to other things that are already there to give you what you want. Or what you told you want. I mean, I must look this up, but I must find out if anything's written down in the British Pharmacopoeia about the COVID-19 vaccine, because nobody knew what was in them, did they? So,
well, if you haven't found out by now, somebody watching will be on it, because our audience are like super quick on jumping on stuff, and they'll go out and look. And, I should say also a massive thank you to everyone else that joins me on the MHRA board meetings, Paul, all sorts of people out there that are with us on the board meetings. So grateful, because we really need to be watching these people.
And there are people from the vaccine injured as well.
Yes, there are.
It must be very difficult and so frustrating. It's frustrating enough for us too, but to actually have gone through a problem, it must be terrible.
I know. And when we come to part 2 of this board meeting, we're going to be talking very much about the vaccine engine. We're going to be talking about yellow card. So shall we finish then this little segment on the farewell to June? Because that's how we finished the meeting. Professor Anthony Hardern decided that he was going to do his farewell. And he said that, obviously, you've already said June was a national treasure. She saved so many lives. She was there just when the country needed her, because, of course, let's not forget that Dame June Raine was CEO of the MHRA, and the MHRA were the first in the world to approve and administer the COVID-19 vaccine. And we know that it was
everything's rush. We must
rush.
Yeah.
Oh, well, talking about rush, I mean, Drew Weissman and Kathleen Carico, we know that within 15 minutes of getting the code, they had the vaccine ready. So a vaccine, we know it's not, but a vaccine that would normally take 10 years to develop is taking months. And now 100 days.
But it's a story, isn't it?
So no, sorry, 48 hours.
You have a code, you wrap it up in a fat bubble, and you put it into the body. What could possibly go wrong? People don't understand how intricate and involved not only the immune system is, but the whole interactions within the body. You can't influence things like they say that you can. And that's why it leads to breakdown of systems and side effects and cancers and all the rest. It's just, I mean, if I can see that, they must know that.
Of course they do. Of course they do. And we're going to come on to that in part 2. So we've waved goodbye to Dame June, and I did think that there was a bit of a weak sort of round of applause, wasn't it? Didn't you think?
Well, I think they were saving it for
awkward,
weren't they?
Oh yeah, I mean, Professor Anthony Hardern, I keep calling him by mistake. He was saying that they were going to be acknowledging her in other ways. And for those of you that have never attended an MHRA board meeting before, we go to the public board meeting, which is normally in the morning, and it's not for the faint-hearted. It's 2.5 hours normally, and he overran on his first meeting. So last Tuesday's meeting, or a week ago by the time you see this, just over a week ago, the meeting was nearly 3 hours, nearly 3 hours. It was 10 o'clock, nearly till 1 o'clock. And then after they've said goodbye to us, then they go away and have lunch, and then they have a private board meeting. And I've asked on many occasions, what are they discussing in a private board meeting that they can't discuss in a public board meeting? And the answer that I received back was that a private board meeting, industry and stakeholders found it easier to speak when they knew that they weren't being watched, basically. So it was to make it easy for industry. It's more relaxed environment and not being watched. But they do have a private board meeting. So, I mean, Cheryl, we came out of that board meeting and we were furious. We were furious not just about all the things that we've just talked about, but we were also furious because of what we heard with regards to yellow cards. So for those of you that have enjoyed seeing me and Cheryl back together again, because we're both two peas in the same pod, I think. We've just MHRA, mRNA, we're on it, and nothing is going to deter us from the mission. So if you're watching MHRA, we're not taking our eyes off you, we're watching. But if you've enjoyed this, please share it, because Cheryl and I will be doing loads of stuff together and bringing on more guests as well, loads of guests and experts to talk to. But stay tuned for part 2, which will be coming very soon. And that will be adverse reactions, yellow card, the future of the yellow card, as was discussed at this last MHRA board meeting. So before we say goodbye, Cheryl, is there anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
Well, just a point that I've just noticed that I'd written down that everybody should be aware of, that it was actually stated at the meeting that the NHS provides the people for the studies and the NHS have the patients then for the products.
Do you want to just repeat that?
That was Raj again. So the NHS provide people for the studies, and the NHS then go on to provide patients for the products. So that is full circle. We'll take you in, we'll clinically trial you, and then we'll put you on the products.
Well, I think that's a very appropriate place to finish, don't you, Cheryl? And for those of you who are watching and you can't wait for the next podcast, you can always find Cheryl and I on X. I'm at Debi, Debi Evans, Evans, matron. And Cheryl, where can we find you on X?
I'm Cheryl Grainger with an I, 4.
So thank you to everybody that's watched. That's part 1 done. Hold on to your hats, because part 2 will be on the way. We'll see you soon. Take care. God bless.
Bye-bye.